How can you trust the Bible when it's been written by men? Or how do you know the Bible hasn't been changed when, just like the game of telephone, information changes as it's passed down? These are some of the questions that I began to ask when I started to seek for myself whether or not I could trust what the Bible had to say. And one of the coolest things I ever heard from somebody say was my brother. When he started reading the Bible, he said, man, even if 10% of what the Bible said is actually God's words, it's worth digging for. And he's so right. But I want to share with you guys 3 fundamental points that are going to help you decipher whether or not you can trust the Bible. The first one we're going to talk about is called textual criticism. Now, textual criticism is essentially the scholarly discipline of reconstructing the original text of a document when the original is no longer available by comparing different versions and variants. There is hours of discussion to be had about just this very subject. And so if you want to look deeper on this topic, look into the description below and you're going to find some links to videos like Mike Winger, who's done far more research, and I highly recommend you check them out. But to give you a 10,000-foot view on textual criticism, the verdict is this. Over 99% of the variants are slips of the pen, misspellings, or words that are added to affirm the divinity of Christ or repeat something that was already mentioned in a previous verse. So for example, instead of the scribe just putting Jesus, there are places and instances and variants where in the earlier documents we just have Jesus, but in some of the later documents we see Jesus Christ. And so this is evidence of a scribe adding in Christ, but that doesn't change anything because in just a few verses prior, Jesus Christ is already mentioned. To boil this all down for you, there are 3 verses that are of primary concern that you should be concerned about that are absolutely considered major variants. And I want to share those with you right now so you can see for yourself what they are. The first major variant is the long ending in Mark. It's in Mark 16:9 through 20, and it does not exist in the earliest manuscripts. The second one is John 7:53 through 8:11, which is the story of the woman caught in adultery. And then the last one is 1 John 5:7, which is about the Trinity. Now, if you take these verses and look at them within the context of the entire Bible, they do not change anything about the core principles that we have throughout the rest of the scriptures. Whether you have them or you don't, they do not change anything about the biblical narrative, about the core principles, and the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus the Christ. Now, considering the fact that the printing press wasn't even invented until 1440 AD, it is mind-blowing that the culmination of the documents that we have corroborate and match up as much as they do, considering all of the copies that we have been passed down and have been handwritten. We have ancient documents all the way from 1500 AD all the way back to 50 AD. And considering the context of everything else that has been written down historically, that is almost instantaneous. There is nothing in antiquity that comes close to being more trustworthy than what we have in the New Testament alone. Now, talk about the Old Testament. The book of Isaiah is one of the documents that was found in an archaeological discovery known as the Dead Sea Scrolls, which backdates our view of the book of Isaiah 1,000 years. This document alone lines up about 95% of every single word. There is no other document in all of antiquity that is historically sound in the realm of textual criticism like the Bible. But moving on, the second point that I want to talk about is prophecy. One of the most profound aspects about the scriptures is how Jesus fulfilled prophecy. Look at verses like Psalm 22 or Isaiah 53. We could go on and on and on about the prophecies that Jesus fulfilled. Now, in order for one man to fulfill just 8 of the 300 prophecies about the Messiah, the chances are 1 in 10 to the 18th power. That's a 1 with 18 zeros behind it. Now you stretch that to one man fulfilling all 300 of those prophecies that Jesus aligns with. It's now 1 in 10 to the 2000th power. That's a 1 with 2,000 zeros behind it. Just to give you some reference, the number of stars in the sky is roughly 10 to the 24th power. The last thing I want to share is extra biblical sources. Now, obviously, we have the early Christian sources of Paul's letters backdating from 30 to 50 AD. The Didache, which is the early Christian discipleship manual written between 50 and 70 AD, which recounts the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. We have Ignatius of Antioch in his letters between 110 and 115 AD, where he references Jesus' crucifixion, resurrection, and his appearance to his disciples after his death. Other early non-Christian sources are Josephus, who was a Jewish historian, wrote around 90 to 95 AD and made two references to Jesus. One briefly mentions James, the brother of Jesus, who was called the Christ. A longer disputed passage in his works, Antiquities, refers to Jesus, his miracles, his crucifixion, and his appearance alive again in the third day. And Tacitus, the Roman historian, mentioned Jesus' execution by Pontius Pilate during the reign of Tiberius in a work written around 116 AD, where he was likely repeating accounts from Christians, but he confirms the core historical details about Jesus' death. It's said that there's well over 100 of these extra biblical sources that we can point to, which is far greater than anything else that we have during that time period. And so, like I said, there is no other historical document that is more trustworthy, more validated than what we have in the biblical canon. Now, all of the information that I just shared with you took me about a year and a half to study and understand for myself, because I had to see with my own eyes the things that I shared with you. And so, while I would never claim to be a historian or a biblical scholar, trusting in the Bible should not be taken lightly. And I want you to know that your questions and concerns about whether or not you should trust the Bible are valid. And so I just want to encourage you to seek the truth for yourself. Don't take anyone's word for this, because this is an extraordinarily important question that shouldn't be taken lightly. One of the things that I want you to know, if you take nothing else from this video, is that you should never depend on any teacher or preacher's perspective, because nobody can have a relationship with God for you. And I hope that this video is just a starting place for you to seek out the truth about whether or not you can trust the Bible and what it has to say for yourself. Because this isn't about religion. This isn't about doing better and trying harder. This is about having a real relationship with the creator of the entire universe. If someone that you knew passed away and wrote you love letters and instructions to bring you back to themselves and remind you of who they were, would you try to read those letters to make yourself a better person? Or are you going to read those letters because that person is worth finding? That person is worth being revered and remembered. And so my hope for this video is that you recognize the hand of God reaching out to you, and that you would seek to have a relationship with the one who formed you in your mother's womb. Nobody can have a relationship with God for you. This isn't something I can bottle up and hand deliver. This is something that you have to seek and experience for yourself. If you want to know more about the scriptures and you want to continue to dive deep, like and subscribe. Those are just my thoughts for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you tomorrow.